The shovel bit into frozen earth, with the sound of breaking bones. Each strike sent lightning up Samuel Garrett's arms, but he kept digging, kept counting, 107, 108, because if he stopped counting, he'd have to think about what lay wrapped in the quilt beside him. Margaret's body had grown cold during the night, her fever finally breaking in the worst possible way. 3 days of delirium, calling out names he didn't recognize, reaching for things that weren't there. And now, as dawn painted the sky the color of old blood, Samuel was breaking his promise to bury her in the church cemetery beside her parents. But the ground was too hard, the town too far, and something in his chest had shattered when her breathing stopped, leaving him hollow as a burned-out barn. When the hole was deep enough, he lowered her down with shaking hands, whispering words he should have said when she could hear them. The dirt fell heavy, each shovelful like a door closing. By the time he placed the rough wooden cross he'd carved, the sun hung low and merciless. Samuel walked back to the cabin on unsteady legs, his clothes stiff with sweat and grave dirt. The silence inside hit him like a physical blow. No humming from the kitchen, no soft footsteps on the plank floor, no gentle voice asking about his day, just emptiness that seemed to breathe. He sat at the table where they'd shared 1,000 meals and stared at her chair, still pushed back at the angle she liked. Her sewing basket sat beside it, a half-finished shirt draped over the edge, like she'd just stepped away for a moment. The knock came as darkness swallowed the last light. 3 soft raps, deliberate and patient. Samuel's heart hammered against his ribs. No one knew Margaret was gone. No one should be riding out here after dark, not with Comanche war parties moving through the territory and winter making men desperate. He reached for the rifle above the door, then froze. Through the frost-etched window he could see a woman's silhouette, small, wrapped in a dark shawl, standing perfectly still. When he opened the door, the words died in his throat. It was Margaret's face looking back at him, but not Margaret, younger by 5 years, with the same green eyes and copper hair, but marked by sorrows he'd never seen in his wife's gentle features. "Hello, Samuel," she said quietly. "I came as soon as I could. Elena." The name escaped his lips like a prayer and a curse combined. He hadn't spoken it aloud in 8 years, not since the day Margaret had forbidden him to ever mention her sister's name in their house. She stepped past him without invitation, her eyes taking in the cabin with a strange mixture of familiarity and loss. Same walls, same furniture, but everything touched by Margaret's gentle hand now seemed to accuse Elena of things left unsaid. "She's gone, isn't she?" Elena's voice carried certainty, not question. Samuel's grip tightened on the rifle. "How did you?" "I felt it. Yesterday around noon, like something tearing inside my chest." Elena pulled off her shawl, revealing a travel-worn dress and hollow cheeks that spoke of hard miles and harder choices. "We always could sense each other's pain, Maggie and I. Even after," she didn't finish, but Samuel heard the words anyway. "Even after you chose him over me. Even after you ran away. Even after we stopped being sisters. You shouldn't be here," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The resemblance was devastating, the same tilt of her head when thinking, the same way of wrapping her arms around herself when cold. But where Margaret had been sunlight, Elena was shadow. Where else would I go? Elena moved to the stove, checking the cold ashes with practiced efficiency. "I've been traveling for 3 days, sold everything I had for a horse and supplies. There's nothing left behind me, Samuel. Nothing but graves and burned bridges." He watched her kindle a fire with swift, sure movements, the same way Margaret used to, but with an edge of desperation his wife had never possessed. "Elena, you can't stay. People will talk. They'll say that the grieving widower took comfort with his dead wife's sister." Elena's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "Let them talk. I've heard worse." The flames caught, casting dancing shadows across her face. In the flickering light, she looked so much like Margaret that Samuel's breath caught. But then she turned, and he saw the differences, the hardness around her eyes, the set of her mouth that spoke of battles fought and lost. "I didn't come here to complicate your mourning," she said softly. I came because she would have wanted me to. Because whatever happened between us, we were blood. Outside, a coyote howled long and mournful. Elena shivered and moved closer to the fire. There's something you need to know, she continued. About why I left. About what Margaret never told you. Samuel poured coffee with hands that shook more than they should have. The truth, when it came, arrived like a cold blade between his ribs. She was already married when she met you, Elena said, staring into the fire, to a man named Dalton Cross, a gambler and a drunk who beat her when the cards went bad. The coffee cup slipped from Samuel's fingers, shattering against the floor. That's impossible. Margaret would never lie. Elena's green eyes found his. She lied every day of your marriage, Samuel. Every time she told you her past didn't matter. Every time she claimed I left because I was jealous of your happiness. Samuel felt the cabin walls closing in. 8 years of marriage, and he'd never questioned the gaps in Margaret's stories, never pushed when she changed subjects or grew quiet at certain names. Dalton never filed papers when she ran. Elena continued relentlessly. In the eyes of the law, she was still his wife when she spoke vows with you, which means, stop. Samuel's voice cracked like a whip. Just stop. But Elena pressed on, her words falling like stones into still water. I tried to tell her, begged her to get a proper divorce before she married you, but she was so happy, so sure that distance would keep her safe. And I loved you both too much to destroy that happiness. The truth hit him then, a revelation that stole his breath. You left to protect us. I left because staying would have meant watching Dalton track her down eventually, and when he did, Elena's voice broke. He would have killed you both. I couldn't bear to watch that happen. Thunder rolled across the prairie, and with it came the sound Samuel had been dreading, hoofbeats, multiple riders approaching fast. Elena went rigid, her face draining of color. No, she whispered. He can't have found me, not this quickly. Samuel moved to the window, peering through the darkness. 4 riders sat their horses just beyond rifle range, their forms black against the storm-pregnant sky. Lightning flickered, illuminating a face he'd never seen but somehow recognized from Elena's nightmares. Dalton Cross was a big man with a gray-streaked beard and eyes like winter ice. Even at this distance, Samuel could feel the casual cruelty radiating from him like heat from forged coals. Elena Whitmore, the man's voice carried across the wind. Come on out, darling, time to come home. Elena's hand found Samuel's arm, her fingers digging in like claws. He thinks Margaret was me, she whispered. He never knew about the switch, never knew she took my name when she ran. Samuel's mind reeled. Margaret Whitmore, not Margaret Garrett, not even Margaret Cross. She'd been living as her sister all along. You got my wife in there, mister, Dalton called, and I aim to collect what's mine. In the terrible silence that followed, Elena moved to Margaret's sewing basket with shaking hands. From beneath the half-finished shirt, she pulled out a small tin box Samuel had never seen before. She kept letters, Elena whispered, opening the box to reveal dozens of folded papers. Every one I ever sent, even after she stopped writing back. Samuel watched Elena's fingers trace familiar handwriting, her face crumpling with grief held too long. I told her about my life on the road, the towns where I sang in saloons to buy food, the men who tried to buy more than songs, the nights I slept in barns and told myself it was better than the alternative. Lightning illuminated the cabin in stark detail as Elena pulled out the most recent letter, dated just 2 months ago. I wrote that I was sick, lung fever, getting worse, that I didn't have much time left, and wanted to see her one more time. She never told me, Samuel said softly, because she knew you'd insist she go to me, and she couldn't bear to leave you, even for my sake. Elena's tears fell onto the paper, smudging ink that had traveled 1,000 miles to reach this moment. She loved you more than her own life, Samuel, more than her sister's life apparently. Outside, Dalton's voice rose with impatience. 5 minutes, then we're coming in, and if I have to drag her out over your dead body, so be it. Elena stood slowly, her decision written in the set of her shoulders. There's a back window, small but you could make it to the creek bed. Ride to town, Tell them what happened here. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Elena touched his face with fingers that trembled like bird wings. Margaret made me promise in her last letter, if anything happened to her, I was to look after you, make sure you survived to remember her properly. Samuel caught her hand, holding it against his cheek. In the firelight, with grief softening her features, she looked exactly like his wife. But when she smiled, it was Elena's smile, sadder, wiser, marked by losses Margaret had never known. She used to say you were the brave one, he whispered, always protecting everyone else, even when it cost you everything. Then let me protect you now. Elena kissed his forehead gently, the way Margaret used to when he was troubled. Go, please. Instead, Samuel reached for his rifle and checked the load. Margaret's gone, but you're here, and your family, that means something. Elena's eyes widened with surprise, and something that might have been hope. Samuel Garrett stepped onto his porch as lightning split the sky, his rifle cradled in steady hands. The rain had started, fat drops that struck the dust like bullets. You want Elena Whitmore, he called to the riders. But Elena Whitmore died yesterday of lung fever. Buried her myself this morning. Dalton Cross urged his horse closer, suspicion written in every line of his weathered face. You're lying. Check the grave if you want. Fresh turned earth behind the cabin, though I doubt you'll find much. Fever burned her down to nothing but bones and regret. From inside the cabin came the sound Elena had asked for, her voice raised in an old hymn Margaret used to sing. But now it was cracked and weak, the voice of a woman touched by death's cold fingers. Dalton's eyes narrowed. Bring her out. Let me see her face. She's dying, Samuel said flatly. Came here looking for her sister, only to learn Margaret passed 2 years back. Fever took them both, seems like. You want to drag a corpse back to Kansas. That's your business, but you'll have to go through me first. The bluff hung in the air like smoke. One of Dalton's men shifted nervously in his saddle. Boss, maybe we should. Shut up. Dalton studied Samuel's face, looking for tells. But 8 years of marriage to a woman carrying secrets had taught Samuel how to hide his own. Elena's singing stopped abruptly, replaced by a fit of coughing that sounded like death rattling in her chest. She'd learned the art of sickness from years of watching Margaret's final days, and now she played it like a master musician. Damn, Dalton muttered. Then louder, if she dies, bury her deep. I don't want word getting back that Dalton Cross couldn't track down one sick woman. The riders wheeled their horses and vanished into the storm, leaving Samuel alone on the porch with rain washing the tension from his shoulders. Inside, Elena collapsed into Margaret's chair, exhausted by the performance that had saved both their lives. Samuel knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. What happens now? She asked quietly. Samuel looked around the cabin at Margaret's sewing basket, her chair, the life they'd built together in this small space. Then he looked at Elena, seeing not his wife's ghost but a woman who'd sacrificed everything for love. Now we learn to live with the truth, he said. All of it. Years later, when travelers passed the Garrett homestead, they'd see 2 graves on the hill behind the cabin. One marked Margaret Garrett, beloved wife, and another marked Elena Whitmore, beloved sister. What they never knew was that Samuel tended both graves with equal devotion, and that the woman who sometimes stood beside him in the garden, her copper hair now streaked with silver, carried both their memories in her heart. Some truths were too complicated for headstones, but simple enough for love to understand. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying secrets that would never need telling, and Elena, who was also Margaret, who was also herself, smiled as she watched the sun set over the land they'd all learned to call home.